This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. So as we have seen yesterday, there are three activities which we discussed. Activity number one is related to your personal introduction. All these points will have to be listed out, and then accordingly you need to have your proper precise introduction, which is to be in an attractive manner. Point number two is related to basic accounting, accounting cycle, golden rules of accounting, P&L heads, balance sheet head. Activity number three, baseline configuration steps until GL posting, meaning GL debit, GL credit posting. Similarly, baseline configuration for vendor posting, baseline configuration for customer posting, and then commonly used reports on a daily basis in any organization. In short, if you take any organization, if you take any company who is currently using SAP, when we're talking about an organization who is currently using SAP, in that organization, what kind of reports will they be using on a daily basis? Let it be GL, let it be customer, vendor, cash, bank, whatsoever it is. You should have a basic understanding. Today you may be knowing only two reports, but as we progress, you may be increasing the count. Today I know two reports. After a week, I know 20 reports. Or at the end of the 20 sessions or whatsoever you can say, I know so many reports which are used by an organization, which are used by a user on a daily basis for different reasons. Maybe for daily balance check, daily reconciliation, monthly reconciliation, financial statement, for any kind of a thing. What are all the commonly used report on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, monthly basis, reconciliation reports? Everything you should have at least basic understanding. Once these points are clear, we need to make sure there are certain points which you'll have to understand. Now, the first point that you'll have to talk, that you'll have to understand for your interview preparation is document splitting. First point that you'll have to talk about is document splitting. Now, everybody is aware document splitting is a mandatory point, mandatory question in every interview that you attend, irrespective of your level of experience. Meaning, whether you are a fresher, whether you have 1 year experience, 2 year experience, 10-year experience, 20 years of experience, it is mandatory to be discussed regarding a document splitting. Now, here, when you're talking about a document splitting, before you understand what is document splitting, if you go to activity number 3, before you go to document splitting, if you look at activity number 3, and these three activities, activity number 3, whatever the three first steps you have, baseline config till GL posting, baseline config till vendor posting, till customer posting are key points. If you are clear with the first 3 points, understanding of document splitting is very simple. And similarly, if you are clear with the first point, activity number 2, accounting cycle, golden rules of accounting, P&L heads, balance sheet heads. Now, activity number 2, activity number 3 will have a direct impact on your document splitting. Meaning, though this is part of your SAP configuration, if you are clear with the activity number 2, activity number 3, this is very simple, very easy for everybody to understand because it is straight away connected to those points. Now, how this is straight away connected to those points? When you're talking about document splitting is all about your document posting. When we say document splitting is all about document posting, when you're talking about document posting, you're talking about debit and credit. Document splitting is all about your document posting. When I'm talking about document posting, I'm talking about debit and credit. We are all aware, without debit, without credit, there is no document posting. Now, when you're talking about document posting, you need to understand on what basis you are posting a document. Meaning, you will be debiting an account or you will be crediting an account based on the accounting rule. You have different rules: personal account, real account, nominal account. No other go, you need to understand what are these rules of accounting, according to which rule we are debiting, according to which rule we are crediting. First point, you need to understand which accounting entry are you taking. For this accounting entry, what rules are applied. Basic understanding initially only you need to understand, so that as we progress you will have the basic understanding, because there are interviews, there are people who will verify your basic accounting understanding also. If you go to typically product based companies, not the consulting based companies or not the service based companies, if you are giving interviews for the product based companies, they will be specifically verifying your accounting knowledge. In all the product based companies or interviews where you have client round, you must have heard in some companies they say that there will be a client round. In the client round, they specifically verify your accounting understanding. In the client round, they will be specifically verifying your accounting understanding, your business process understanding. If they find, yes, this candidate is able to understand the accounting, he is good at basic accounting, he is able to understand business transactions, he is able to understand our requirement, then they will say, yes, we are okay with this candidate. Meaning different points are verified at a different stage based on the different requirement. We never know which requirement come in our way to get a job. So you'll have to be prepared in all the perspectives to make sure any requirement which is coming in your way, you will be able to capitalize it. Now, in order to post a document, you need to understand what is debit, what is credit. Now, any debit, any credit that you are posting, any debit, any credit that you are posting is based on business transaction. Any debit, any credit that you are posting is based on business transaction. When you're talking about business transaction, here you're talking about accounting cycle. When I'm talking about business transaction, I am representing accounting cycle. When I'm talking about accounting cycle, again I'm representing based on the business transaction, what is the sequence of activities which will be performed from the accounting perspective. When we're talking about from accounting perspective, you're not representing any application here. When we're talking about not representing any application, you may be using any application. You may be using a Tally, Oracle, SAP, whatsoever it is. The accounting sequence, accounting fundamental flow will remain the same. Meaning, from a debit credit perspective, if you take a business transaction, you'll have to perform the accounting cycle. To perform this accounting cycle, you are using SAP in our example. In our example, we are using SAP to perform the accounting cycle, in which you are going to record the journal entry in short. You are going to call it as journal entry or accounting entry, journal voucher or accounting document. You may be representing this with different kind of terminology. At the end of the day, it is one and the same, your debit and credit. Now, when you are posting a debit and credit, you know that for posting any debit and credit, randomly left and right, you cannot put whatever comes in your mind. It is strictly based on the business transaction. Your accounting entry is strictly based on the business transaction. According to business transaction, you are going to decide what to debit, what to credit. It is not your own choice. You will debit any account, you will credit any account. Depending on, if I put a debit to my bank account, my bank balance will increase. Doesn't mean every entry I will take it on the bank debit side. That is not the right approach. You need to make sure when you're talking about a business transaction, when you're talking about accounting, for accounting there is a law. For accounting there is a law. There are certain guidelines, principles that are to be followed, which are nothing but your Indian accounting standard, US GAAP, IFRS. Depending on the accounting standard, accounting principle which your organization is adopting, according to that you need to prepare your financials, you need to prepare your debit credit accounting entries. Now, while preparing the accounting entries, you have to first have a clarity how my debit and credit is being processed. When I say how my debit and credit is being processed, for example, I am writing about business transactions here. When I'm talking about business transaction, I may call GL transaction, I may call vendor transaction, I may call customer transaction, I may call fixed asset transaction. Basically, these are the key four categorizations that we will be talking about. Majoritarily, these are the four key categorizations that you will be talking about: GA transaction, vendor transaction, customer transaction, and then fixed asset transaction. Now, GL is related to main ledger. GL is related to main ledger, vendor is related to sub ledger, customer is again related to sub ledger, fixed asset is also sub ledger. In short, you are able to represent four basic categorization of a business transaction: GL, vendor, customer, fixed asset. Within these four, you are able to sub-classify into two categorization: main ledger, sub ledger. We are talking about GL as a main ledger. We are talking about customer, vendor, fixed asset as a sub ledger. Now here the whole objective of our discussion is document splitting. The whole objective of our discussion is document splitting. Now this document splitting, whenever you are posting any business transaction, whenever you are posting any accounting entry, any journal entry, will have to be brought into picture. Any accounting entry that you are processing, document splitting will come into picture, because in the current situation, whosoever is getting into the market, everybody will represent S4HANA system. You are going to represent S4HANA FICO. There is something called S4HANA FICO. There is something called SAP ECC FICO. There is something called SAP S4HANA FICO. There is something called SAP ECC FICO. First, we should have a clarity. Now, from where you will get the clarity? You will get the clarity from your activity number 1. You will get the clarity from your activity number 1. In this activity, you are representing your name, your total experience, relevant experience, project, everything. According to that, you will be able to have a clarity based on your experience, based on your profile, whether you are experienced in SAP FICO related to ECC, or you are experienced in SAP FICO related to S4HANA, or combined. Maybe partially you worked in ECC client, partially you also worked on client who is using S4HANA. Both are possible situations. It can be that you have worked so far only in ECC, valid scenario. You have worked only in S4HANA, valid scenario. You worked both in ECC and S4HANA, both. This is also valid scenario. In short, anything can be a valid scenario. You cannot say I know only ECC, I know only S4HANA. Will never be the situation. Nobody will accept it. If you tell I know only ECC, anybody will accept it. If you say I know only ECC, anybody will accept it. But when you say I know only S4HANA, nobody will accept it, because there's no way that you will straight away come to S4HANA without having any knowledge, without having any information about ECC, because S4HANA is extension of ECC. S4HANA is extension of ECC from your FICO module perspective. If you talk from the SAP FICO point of view, if you talk from the SAP FICO perspective, you'll have to make sure minimum 80% of ECC SAP FICO is exactly the same in S4HANA SAP FICO. Meaning, if you know how ECC SAP FICO is working, it is the same way how SAP S4HANA FICO is working. If you know SAP S4HANA FICO, 80% of your S4HANA FICO is exactly the same as your ECC SAP FICO. Now, the reason why we need to keep this point at the beginning itself, because there are people who will ask you the differences between ECC to S4HANA. There are people who will ask you the difference between ECC to S4HANA. Here, majoritarily, we will go wrong. When I say majoritarily, we will go wrong. You are supposed to talk changes from ECC to S4HANA only with respect to SAP FICO business processes, not from the technological point of view. When I say not from the technological point of view, you are not a technical consultant. You are not giving any interview for the project manager or any other positions to talk overall SAP ECC to S4 SAP S4 HANA changes. You are representing yourself as a FICO consultant. Please make sure you understand the changes only with respect to ECC to S4 HANA, keeping SAP FICO business processes, business functionalities in your mind. Apart from this, forget about everything. This is what the whole objective, the main intention of any person who is asking you differences between ECC and S4 HANA. Now, when you're talking about the differences between ECC and S4 HANA, here is something that you have listed: S4 HANA SAP FICO and SAP ECC SAP FICO. Now, the topic that we're talking about is document splitting. Topic that we're talking about here is document splitting. In S4 HANA system, document splitting is mandatory. In SAP S4 HANA system, document splitting is mandatory. In SAP ECC, document splitting is optional. We are telling that in SAP S4 HANA system, document splitting is mandatory. In SAP ECC system, document splitting is optional. Whenever you are talking about a term called optional, it is not mandatory to be activated. It can be active, it can be inactive. Both are possible. When you're talking about optional, depending on your requirement, you can activate the document splitting. Depending on your requirement, you can deactivate the document splitting. Now, on what basis you will be activating the document splitting? on what basis you will be deactivating the document splitting, especially when you are in SAP ECC version, SAP ECC system. In your SAP ECC version, in your SAP ECC system, there are two types of ledgers. There are two types of ledger. Now you understand types of ledgers in SAP. When you're talking about types of ledgers in SAP, there are two types of ledger. One is your classic ledger, second one is new ledger. When you're talking about ledger, wherever you're talking about a ledger, here we are representing general ledger. Here your ledger is representing general ledger. Here also I'll put general ledger. Classic general ledger, new general ledger. In short, you would have heard classic GL, new GL. In short, it is your classic GL or it is your new GL. Now, when you're talking about classic GL, when you're talking about new GL, and there is something called, you also represent something called universal GL, universal ledger. There are certain points, there are certain terminologies which you should slowly understand, keep in your mind, because when you're using these terms in your interview, when you're representing these terminologies, when you're while talking to somebody, this will add very good weightage. Now, when you're talking about classic GL, this is applicable only in ECC. Your classic GL is only applicable in ECC. New GL is also applicable in ECC, or I'll put applicable in ECC. This is applicable in ECC and S/4HANA. New GL is applicable in ECC and S/4HANA. Universal ledger is applicable in S/4HANA. This is applicable in HANA. Here I'll put A. Okay, this is applicable HANA. Now what we have to do here is, whenever you're talking about classic GL, new GL, universal GL or universal ledger, now for everything there is a table. For each of this ledger there is a table. Now what is the table that you have to understand with respect to this? What is the table that we need to understand? When you're talking about classic GL, you need to understand something called GLT0. When you're talking about classic GL, you should understand something called GLT0. Similarly, when you're talking about new general ledger, new GL, you need to understand something called FAGL, Fagel Flex A, and then T, and then P. You have Fagel Flex A, Fagel Flex T, Fagel Flex P with respect to new GL. When you're talking about universal GL, universal ledger, you're talking about AC DOCA and AC DOC P, actual and then planning. P is nothing but planning, A is nothing but actual, T is nothing but a total. Now these are the three tables, these are the three types of ledgers that we usually have in SAP, both in ECC and S/4HANA system. This classification is important. Tomorrow somebody might ask, what is classic GL, what is new GL, have you worked on classic GL, have you worked on new GL, have you worked on universal GL or universal ledger? Don't get confused. When somebody is asking these terminologies, do not get confused. Wherever possible, you need to bring these terminologies and then explain. Now here your document splitting is applicable here and here. Your document splitting is applicable in new GL and universal GL. In short, in SAP S/4HANA system, classic GL is removed. There is no point of classic GL if you are coming into S/4HANA system. Classic GL is applicable only if you are in ECC system. Now, even in ECC, until certain releases only, classic GL is applicable. From a certain level of releases, classic GL is removed. It's only new GL. Now, how you will understand in ECC whether there is a classic GL implemented or new GL implemented? Based on SPRO, financial accounting note. When you look at SPRO, when you go to financial accounting, in ECC system, you will find two types of financial accounting. One is only financial accounting, another one is financial accounting in bracket new. One is only financial accounting, another one is financial accounting in bracket new. If you find in ECC system only financial accounting, in which means that the client is working on classic GL. In ECC system, in the real-time system I'm talking about, not in the practice server. In the practice server, you will be able to see both. But in the real-time system, if your client is using SAP in ECC system, either they will have only financial accounting node enabled or only financial accounting new node enabled, which is determining whether the client is working on classic GL or new GL. Now tomorrow when somebody is asking you from your resume, from your point number 1, from your activity number 1, if you say that I worked on one project, some implementation rollout support, they might ask you in which version your client is working on or in which environment you have worked. When they're talking about in which environment you worked, whether you worked on ECC environment or you worked on S4 HANA environment. Let's say I'm talking about I worked on ECC environment, whether you worked on classic GL or you worked on new GL. You cannot say I do not know. You cannot say I do not know because you are the one who worked in the project. You must know whether your client was working on classic GL or new GL. How you will identify based on the financial accounting note. If it is only financial accounting, it is classic. If it is financial accounting in bracket new, it is your new GL. After this, you need to understand document splitting is applicable from new GL onwards. Now, when you're talking about new GL, there is something called new GL concept. There's something called new GL concepts. According to new GL concept, there is a list. According to new GL concept, there is a list. From this new GL concept, one of the activity is your document splitting. From the new GL concept, one of the new introduction or one of the addition in the new GL concept is your document splitting. When you're talking about document splitting, the whole objective of splitting your document is to make sure your financial reports are generated at multiple dimensions. With the help of document splitting, you will be able to generate financial reports at multiple dimensions. When you're talking about multiple dimensions, you're talking about account assignments. When you're talking about multiple dimensions, you're talking about account assignment. Again, when you're talking about account assignment, we are specifically talking about profit center, segment, and then business area. These are basically the account assignments, which is nothing but profit center, segment, and business area. You need to have a clarity. According to document splitting, you will be able to generate your financial reports at multiple dimensions called account assignment. These account assignments are nothing but profit center, segment, and business area. Now, in order to generate a financial statement at profit center level, at segment level, at business area level, you must use document splitting functionality. In order to generate financial statement, in order to use financial statement at account assignment level or at multi-dimension level, you'll have to use document splitting functionality. Only with the help of document splitting functionality, this is possible. If document splitting is not there, this is not possible. Now, when you're talking about financial statements at multiple dimensions, forget about this dimensions and all. First, let us talk about the financial statement. If I'm talking about my financial statement, if I'm talking about my financial, we are majoritarily representing three reports here. Whenever you talk about any financial statement, we are majoritarily representing three statements here. First one is your trial balance. Second one is your profit and loss statement. Third one is your balance sheet. Third one is your balance sheet. Now everybody is aware, by default, any transaction that you record in SAP, by default, any accounting transaction, any financial transaction which you are going to record in SAP is with respect to company code. Meaning Your trial balance is executed by default at company code level. Your P&L is executed by default at company code level. Your balance sheet is also executed by default at company code level, meaning based on the company code in SAP without making any additional settings, you can straight away pull your TB, P&L, balance sheet. But you know that according to your business process, according to your business requirement, you have multiple dimensions in your business, you have multiple line of businesses in your organization. Now according to you, though I'm operating my business under the same name, even though I'm operating my business under the same name, within my business I have classified my business into multiple dimensions, multiple LOBs, multiple verticals, multiple line of businesses. Meaning, if you take any organization, for example, if you take any company code related to Lenovo computer, Acer computer, Dell computer, because the similar company codes everybody has configured so far. Now under my computer business, I may be telling that desktop is a separate line of business for me, or desktop is a different vertical for me. Similarly, laptop is a different line of business for me. Laptop is a different business vertical for me. Likewise, I may have any kind of a classification. It is completely based on the client requirement, completely based on the business requirement. Your client may tell at any possibility level, at any combination level, they would like to look at the report. Now you need to look at the possibilities. When I say now you're supposed to look at the possibilities, is it possible to generate the report at this level? When you're talking about is it possible to generate the report at this level, you cannot say I can go to a transaction code, I can execute the report, my output will come. Output will come whenever you execute the report at any combination level. At any combination level, when you pull the report, you will get the output. But accounting is valid only when your reports are correct. You are going to verify the reports, especially your financial statements or your financial reports, based on certain basic fundamentals. When I say you will be able to verify based on the basic fundamental, everybody is aware whenever you generate any trial balance, your TB balance to become zero. Whenever you make sure that you generate any trial balance, you prepare any trial balance, the basic expectation from any accounting candidate is to ensure that your trial balance will become zero. If your TB is not becoming zero, your accounting is not correct. Something went wrong, or you prepared a trial balance in a wrong way. Why something went wrong? Why TB is prepared in a wrong way? Because the basic accounting equation, the basic accounting logic formula is debit is equal to credit. Meaning, whatever the amount you have on the debit side, same amount you are supposed to have on the credit side. If my debit is not equivalent to my credit, your entry itself is not accepted. If your debit and credit are not equal, forget about the dimensions and all. You will not be able to record any posting, any journal entry in SAP if debit, credit are not equal. Even when you write manual entry, you will put debit 100 rupees, credit minus 100, plus 100 debit, minus 100 credit, plus and minus will become 0. That is the basic equation. When you prepare the trial balance, the same logic is applied. If your journal entry total is becoming 0, your trial balance total should become 0 by default. If your TB is not becoming 0, something is wrong in your accounting. Your basic accounting, something went for a toss. This is impossible in SAP. Because if debit and credit is not matching, no way SAP allows you to record the document. There are certain prerequisites, there are certain predefined control points, checkpoints, validations in SAP. When your debit credit is not matching, accounting entry is not possible in system. And when you say that the TB, it has to become 0, whenever you generate at company code level, it will become 0 by default. Whenever you generate at company code level, it will become 0 by default. Now, when you're talking about profit and loss statement, when you're talking about profit and loss statement at again company code level or at the organization level, when you're talking about profit and loss statement, you're talking about something wherein you're going to get either a profit or a loss. Your P&L is going to provide or give you either a profit or a loss. In short, your P&L result will be either positive number or a negative number. Depending on the profit or loss, your P&L might give you a result which will be a positive value or which will be a negative value. If you get positive value from P&L, you call it as Loss, if you get a negative value from your P&L, you call it as a profit. In short, your P&L is supposed to provide a value which is profit or which is loss. It is very rare you will get no profit, no loss. Break even at P&L is very rare. It is very rare that some company will get exactly the same expense, exactly the same income is very rare. These kind of things, situations will happen only in your academic exams, but in reality, in any organization, this is very rare situation. So always remember, your P&L will always give you either a positive number or a negative number. Similarly, when I'm talking about my balance sheet should give you again A is equal to L, meaning asset is equal to my liability. When I'm talking about balance sheet, I'm talking about my assets are equivalent to liabilities. Whatever the value I get for my asset, the same value I should get for my liability. If this is not happening, I am going to upfront tell my accounting is wrong. If my TB is not becoming zero, if I'm not getting profit loss from my P&L, or if I'm not able to tally my asset liability, I am going to upfront tell something is wrong with the accounting. This is wrong. You don't even care to look at your financials because your TB is not zero, your balance sheet is not tallying. No matter what, nobody is going to look at it. Why? It is something which is basic fundamental of accounting. Now this fundamental of accounting is based on your journal entry. Debit, credit, whatever you're writing is deciding the total history of your accounting. Future of your accounting, history of your accounting is based on your debit credit accounting entry. Now your document splitting is controlled at the debit credit accounting entry level, meaning this is the basic requirement. This is the basic requirement overall. In case if your client would like to look at their financial statement, like your client wants to look at the trial balance at a different dimension. Let's say in my organization, in my company, I have 3 line of businesses. Your client is telling in his business, he has got 3 line of businesses, meaning he has got computer business, or he has got laptop business, he has got accessories or servicing whatsoever. It can be anything. They may be having, depending on the nature of a business, they have segregated their business verticals or line of businesses into different categorization. At that vertical level, at that line of business level, they would like to look at the financials, meaning their expectation or their requirement is now to generate trial balance at individual line of business level, P&L at individual line of business level, balance sheet at individual line of business level. Now here comes the question. When you're talking about I needed to segregate. So far this requirement you are able to meet because this is straightforward. This requirement we are able to meet because it is straightforward. When you're talking about this requirement is straightforward, if you take any accounting entry, let's say I will write one accounting entry here. If I put one accounting entry, I'll simply write cash account, debit. This is the basic accounting entry I'm writing. Capital account, credit. I am going to put somewhere around 35,000 on the debit side, 35,000 on the credit side. This is what I'm going to write. Plus value, minus value. As I said, whenever you're talking about values, numbers in the Excel sheet, always take it into accounting format so that you will not have any confusions later on. Now, when you do a total at the accounting entry level, you need to make sure the accounting balance is becoming zero. Make sure accounting balance is becoming zero. In this example, my debit amount is 35,000, my credit amount is 35,000. When I see the debit and credit total, it is becoming zero. If your journal entry total is becoming zero, in short, if your accounting entry total is becoming zero, by default, your trial balance total will become zero. By default, your balance sheet will tally. If your journal entry debit credit is becoming zero, by default, your TB will become zero. By default, your balance sheet asset liability is equal, because this is the base. If your base is correct, whatever you are going to do based on this accounting entry, everything will be correct. If your base itself is not correct, meaning your accounting entry itself is not correct, then everything will be incorrect. Your financial statements, your financial reports are strictly based on the debit credit accounting entry which you are going to write. Now for any organization, this is the basic accounting entry which you are going to record at the company code level. Now, if my requirement is to make sure I wanted to generate my financial statement at a different dimensions, at a different account assignment level, I would say that my different account assignments are profit center, segment, business area. My accounting dimensions or my account assignments are profit center, business area, segment. Now, for example, let's take that you would like to take profit center as the account assignment. If you take profit center as account assignment, you need to make sure this is your total at company code level, or this is amount at company code level. This is amount at company code level. The moment you have the different account assignment, for example, you have an assignment called profit center. I'll say amount at profit center level. At every accounting debit, at every accounting credit, you have to mention which profit center this entry belongs to. For every accounting entry, you have to represent for which profit center this line item belongs to. Every debit, every credit should have a profit center tagged to it. When there is no profit center, there is no accounting entry. Reason, for example, if I talk about the profit center, for cash account, I did not put any profit center. Let's say I leave it blank. And for capital account, I put a profit center. Let's say I'll put PC1. For capital, I put profit center 1. But for for cash, I have not put any profit center. But for capital, I put a profit center. Now, in this case, if I look at the balance or if I look at the amount at profit center level, for debit, for 35,000, there is no profit center. For the credit, for the 35,000, there is a profit center. Meaning, if I try to do a total at this level, when I'm trying to do a total at the profit center level, I'm not able to get debit and credit for profit center. Now, in the picture, you have only one profit center, PC1. If I look at my PC1 for the debit side, there is nothing. If I look at my PC1 for the credit side, there is some amount of 35,000. Now, in this situation, if you're trying to do a total at the profit center level, when you're trying to do a total at the profit center level, let's say debit side, there is no profit center, credit side, you have given a profit center. In this situation, if I try to do a total, this is not becoming 0. In this situation, it is not becoming 0. In this situation, at profit center level, my debit and credit is not becoming 0 because on the debit side, there is no profit center. On the debit side, there is no profit center. When there is no profit center, system will not consider that value into the report. If you have the profit center, value will be taken. If you have no profit center, value will not be taken. Now, considering this is my accounting entry, if I try to look at my company code level trial balance, my TB will become 0 because my accounting entry is 0. If your total of accounting entry is 0, by default, total of trial balance will be 0. If total of profit center level is not 0, by default, total of trial balance will also not be 0. TB also will go for a toss. TB will not be 0. TB will not become 0. Then if your TB is not 0, nobody is going to look at your accounting. If your TB is not becoming 0, nobody is going to look at your accounting. They simply say, no, your accounting is wrong. Please go and verify what entries you processed. Because your TB is not becoming 0, this is the basic accounting fundamental which everybody should know. Meaning, if entry is possible like this, first of all, we are talking about accounting document. In the accounting document, you are talking about two levels. In the accounting document, you are talking about two levels. These two levels are nothing but accounting document debit is equal to credit. In the accounting document, debit is equal to credit. This is the basic equation. This is the basic fundamental which we are all aware of. Second point, if debit and credit are not equal, we cannot post entry. If debit and credit are not equal, we cannot post the entry. This is first condition. Yes, this is correct. But this is not applicable every time. This is applicable only at the company code level. Alright? Only at company code level, this check is applicable and we cannot post. This is applicable only at the company code level and you cannot post the entry. Only at the company code level this is applicable, you cannot post the entry. Similarly, if I put the same statement again, at profit center level, even if debit and credit are not equal, still we can post the entry. The same statement has got a different meaning here when it comes to profit center. When you're at the company code level, debit credit is mismatching, you cannot post the entry. But when it comes to profit center level, in the same accounting document, if I add profit center here, though my debit and credit are not having the profit center level, my balance is not becoming zero, still SAP will allow you to record the entry. Still you can pass this accounting entry in SAP even though debit and credit is not becoming equal at profit center level. Now you know that this is the business requirement. When I say we know that this is the business requirement to generate financial reports at the profit center level. We know that this is the business requirement to generate financial report at profit center level. In order to make sure your financial reports are generated at profit center level, first basic fundamental to generate or to talk about financial statement is trial balance. Everybody is aware when you're talking about a trial balance, TB must become zero. This is the basic functionality, basic fundamental concept which you must be aware of. If you're talking about a trial balance, debit credit must be zero. If you're talking about a trial balance, debit credit must be zero. If your debit credit is not zero, your TB is invalid. Nobody will care about your TB. Nobody even looks at your TB. Nobody even look at your TB if your TB is not becoming zero, because the basic fundamental is TB. Before I go to P&L, before I go to balance sheet, first I would like to look at my TB. I'll verify whether my TB is becoming 0, 0.00. 0 and 0.00 including decimal, it has to be 0. Even if your TB shows 0.01, it is wrong. Even if your TB shows 0.01, it is wrong because it has to be strictly 0.00 only. That is the basic arithmetic logic, accounting accuracy that you are going to verify. If your TB is not becoming 0, there is no point of looking at the financial statement. Now here comes the point. Your client requirement is to look at the financial statement at profit center level. This is a client requirement to look at the financial statement at the profit center level. Meaning, if this is the client requirement, if this is the business requirement, you need to make sure in each and every accounting document, profit center is filled up. Meaning, at profit center level also, I need to make sure my debit and credit is updated, my total is becoming 0. For that, I need to make sure, for example, I'll copy this here. If I put 35,000 for the profit center, 35,000 for the profit center credit, if I do a total here, it is becoming 0. If I do a total here, this is becoming 0 in this situation where debit credit is updated for the profit center. In case if my debit credit is not updated for all the profit centers, my accounting is going for a toss. Now this is the minimum requirement and the standard requirement, mandatory requirement for every client in the SAP. Whoever is using SAP FICO, everybody will have profit center accounting enabled. Everybody will be generating their financial statements at profit center level. Maximum, all the clients will be generating their financial statement at profit center level minimum. Using of your segment, using of your business area is a secondary point. Primary point is to make sure generating your financial statement at profit center level is mandatory. Now, since you know that this is mandatory, if this is not meeting your requirement, this is the last point. When you are going to generate the financial statement like TB, P&L, balance sheet, These are the month-end reports. Once you complete all the data entry, once you complete that all the transactions related to a particular month or current month are posted. In short, once your data entry is completed for a particular month, you are going to execute your financial statement. You are going to work on the financial statement preparation, your financial finalization, accounting closing, in which you are going to come up with this is my TB, this is my profit for the month, or this is the loss for the month. These are the asset position, these are the liabilities position for this particular month. In order to do it, you have to depend on your journals, meaning your accounting entries are the base. If your accounting entries are missing profit center, if your accounting entries are missing profit center, at profit center level, you will not be able to generate the financial statement. Very simple. Because if your accounting entry is missing profit center, your TB will not be tallying. If your accounting entries are missing profit center, your TB will not be tallied. If your TB is not tallying, nobody is going to look at your accounting. Meaning, this is very, very important. This is very, very sensitive requirement. This is very important. At the same time, this is very sensitive requirement right from the beginning. When I say right from the beginning, even before you start your company code configuration, you need to understand at what level you are going to generate your financial statement. Even before you decide to create the company code, even before you log into SAP, you need to decide at what level we are going to generate our financial statement, because you're all aware you are going to do the configuration only after getting the complete business requirement from the client. As I mentioned, when you're talking about your interview preparation, you're not supposed to think from the learning perspective, you should think from the project perspective. Assuming you are already working in SAP, considering this mindset, you'll have to think from SAP FICO perspective. Only then certain points you will be able to understand. Otherwise, you will not understand. If you're thinking from the learning mindset, learning perspective, this will lead to confusion. If you're thinking from the experienced candidate perspective, if you're thinking from the project point of view, you will be able to easily understand. Because if you're working in a project, if you're working as a consultant, what normally we will do, you are not going to create the company code today like you go for a training. If you're learning SAP FICO, what we will do today, you will do company code, after 1 week you will do document splitting, after 1 week you will do some other setting. Meaning in the span of 3 months, in the span of your 4 months, you are going to define the configuration in bits and pieces. This is what the training is teaching us. In the training, this is how you're creating, this is how you're setting up a company code. But when you're in a project, this is not the way. When you're in a project, this is not the way you create a company code. You are going to create a company code only after discussing the complete business process, only after understanding their full business operations. Then you are going to propose the solution to them. Okay, considering your business operations, considering your business requirement, this is what we are going to propose as a solution in SAP. When they say this is what the solution which we are going to propose, your client will tell okay, we are fine with it, we are not okay with it. Then you are going to propose alternative solution until your client requirement is met, until your client requirement is satisfied. You'll have to give different alternative solutions. If your client is not okay with the requirement, there's no point you will set up the system. This is what you are going to do in any project. Meaning, in the project, if you are working in any organization, you are going to understand this financial statement requirement even before you start company code creation. Even before you start your company code creation, even before you get your SAP user ID password. Even before you get your SAP user ID password, you will know at what level these are generated. These are generated, or these things you will come to know even before you get your user ID password in SAP. Now what we are doing actually when you are learning SAP, we are not even aware of what is TB, what is PNL, what is balance sheet, but we created company code, we created left and right accounting entries, we've seen different reports. That is where confusion comes into picture. And that is the reason we will not be able to practically understand what exactly is a document splitting, why this is required, and how important it is from a client point of view, from any organization point of view, from SAP FICO point of view. This is one of the very sensitive configuration. This is one of the very sensitive configurations in SAP FICO, your document splitting, meaning you cannot play with it. When I say you cannot play with it, this is something which is at client level. This is something which is at client level, meaning if your client is using SAP FICO. When you're talking about client, you're talking about the company name. When you're talking about client, you're talking about company name, in short, the group name. For example, if you're talking about Lenovo, if you're talking about Acer, if you're talking about Dell or whatsoever, at the Lenovo level, at the Dell level, at the Sony level, at the Acer level, you are going to talk about client. Now, at this client level, document splitting is a one-time configuration. When we say at client level, document splitting is a one-time configuration. Once you set up configuration at client level, all the company codes related to your client. For example, you're talking about Lenovo. Whether Lenovo has got one company code or Lenovo has got 100 company codes, everybody will have to follow the same document splitting setup, because everybody is again aware that for all your company codes, you are going to use same operating chart of account. Again, we are all aware, for all the company codes, you will be using same operating chart of account. Again, here a point, you have to think from a consultant point of view, not from a SAP FICO learner point of view. SAP FICO learner point of view, what is going to happen? Let me put this. For example, let me put SAP FICO learner and I'll put SAP FICO consultant. As a SAP FICO learner, what I'm going to do, according to me, I would have created. Now there is something called project here. There's something called project here also. When you're learning SAP FICO, the project is ruled out. When you're learning SAP FICO, we take out the project term from our mindset. We don't keep project in our mind. We will blindly start creating the left and right company codes. No logic between one company code to another company code when you're learning, because that's how we practice. That's quite common for everybody. But at one point of time, you need to understand the differentiation. Now, when you're in a project, when you're working as a consultant, this is important. This will be green. If this is not green, you're not working as a consultant. You say that I'm on bench. If you have no project, you call it as you are on a bench. You will tell I am allotted to a project, I am working for a project, or I am on bench. Only 2 points, bench or project. But when you are learning, there's nothing called project. It's all learning, experiment, trial and error. It should not be the case. Once you reach to a certain level, this has to be changed. Now, since there is no project during our learning, I may create, let's say, I may create Apple company code, I may create Sony company code, I may create, let's say, ABC company code. Like this, I may create any company code, meaning one company code does not have connection with another company code. One name is not corresponding to another name. So obviously what I am doing, I am going to create every setting multiple times. Obviously, when I am practicing, I am creating every setting multiple times. One is not having a connection with another. That is common. Everybody will do the same thing. That is common. Everybody will do the same thing. When you are creating the 3 company codes for your practice, definitely you are going to consider 3 different company names. You are going to set up accordingly. This is quite common for everybody. Initially, not every time, it is only initially. Later on, what you need to understand, how exactly company codes are created when you're in a project. As a consultant, how you are going to work. Now, when you're in a project, you are going to have a same name. For example, I would say Lenovo. Then I'll say Lenovo company code 1. I'll tell Lenovo company code 2. Lenovo company code 3 likewise, because I am working for a Lenovo project. When I'm working for Lenovo project, every company code is related to Lenovo only. I cannot say in Lenovo project I will create Acer company code, in Lenovo project I will create Apple company code. Not possible, because it is your client system. If your client is Lenovo, your client is going to have all the Lenovo related company codes. If your client is Apple, you are going to have all the Apple related company codes. Meaning, here comes the differentiation point. You need to have a minute differences clarified. If you are doing practice, make sure when you are practicing, you may be creating different kind of company codes. When you're practicing, you will be creating different kind of company codes, whereas when you're in a project, you will be creating different company codes but under the same group. Different company codes under the same group. In this situation, what you will do, In this situation, you are going to create multiple chart of accounts. In this situation, you are going to create multiple chart of accounts, whereas in this situation, you are going to create single chart of account. Here you are going to create multiple chart of accounts. Here you are going to create single chart of account. This is another point. Here it's a single chart of account. You are creating multiple chart of accounts. These are all the points where things are going wrong when you're practicing, when you're actually thinking, when you're actually looking at from a project point of view, from a consulting point of view. Now, what is going to happen? We are talking about document splitting is a sensitive configuration. For this company code, for this company code, for this company code, since you're using different chart of accounts, in one system, you're going to create a document splitting multiple times. Let's say, I'll put, according to us, this is at company code level document splitting. According to your learning concept, you are going to create your document splitting based on the company code, because you created separate company code. Based on every company code, you have created a separate chart of account. Accordingly, you are creating document splitting multiple times because of your practice. This is fine, this is correct, but you are staying there only. You are not moving out of there. You are understanding this and then you are staying there only, which is not correct. When you're understanding, you're staying there only. When I say this is not correct, because this is not the situation when you're in a project. When you're working as a consultant, this is not going to be the scenario, this is not going to be the situation which will put you in trouble, meaning you will get unwanted confusions. You will get confused for every minor point. Why this is coming? I did not get this error when I'm practicing, because when you were practicing, your approach was different, your thought process is different, your understanding your scenario is different. But when you're working in a project, every company code, though you have n number of company codes, every company code using a single chart of account. This point again everybody is aware. For chart of account, you have three type of chart of account: operating, a group, country chart of account. Your operating chart of account is common across the group. When we say operating chart of account is common across the group, all the Lenovo company codes will be sharing same operating chart of account. Now your document splitting is defined at the chart of account level. Now this is COA level document splitting. When I say COA level, you are having a single chart of account, so I'm going to call it as chart of account level. Now here I have multiple chart of accounts, so I'm going to call it as company code level, because I have multiple chart of accounts because I created multiple company codes. Because I created multiple company codes, I have got multiple chart of accounts. Here, though I have multiple company codes, all are representing single chart of account, because these are all related to same client called Lenovo. These are all same client called Lenovo. Now again, when you're in a project, you are going to represent who is your client. I worked for a client, he is my client or she is my client. You are going to tell Lenovo is the client here. In this, Lenovo is your client. When you're working in a project, you're going to represent Lenovo as a client. When you're practicing, you do not have a specific client here. When I say when you're practicing, you do not have a specific client, you're not looking at from a client perspective. According to you, it's all company code. According to you, it's all company code, because we are not segregating it at any point of time. We may be thinking, we may not be thinking from this perspective. If you're thinking it is good, if not, then something is wrong. Meaning, somewhere you're going to have a confusion which you will never realize. You'll never realize where you are going wrong. You will never realize why somebody is telling we are wrong. According to us, we are correct because our understanding is correct, because you are a learner. As a learner, your understanding is correct, but as a consultant, your understanding is wrong. Whatever is green as a learner may become red as a consultant. Whatever is green at a consultant may be red at a learner. Meaning, you need to have this difference. What you're doing, what purpose you're doing in the practice. For practice, certain things you will be practicing only to get familiarity, only to feel comfortable. Once you get familiarity, once you feel comfortable, you need to understand, okay, I understood, this is how I'm working. Is this the same situation which I will be doing as a consultant tomorrow if I am allotted to a project, then again you need to think. If yes, fine. If not, then you need to understand those differences. Try to fill up those differences. At least understand, at least know the basic. Then when you're talking to somebody, especially in the project and all, you will be able to practically differentiate, yes, because of these reasons they are rejecting me, because of these reasons they are telling, though my answer is correct from my point of view. From my point of view, definition, T code, whatsoever I'm talking is correct, but they are rejecting me, they are telling no, this is not correct. Reason, I'm talking from this perspective. Reason I'm talking from this perspective. According to this perspective, certain things are correct, certain things are going wrong. From the consulting point of view, whatever I am learning are becoming wrong because I have some different way of thinking as a learner, and it has to be changed the moment I become a consultant. The moment you think as a consultant, the moment you become a consultant, the way that you are thinking, the way you practice, the way you understood will have some changes. These changes slowly you need to understand, and then slowly you need to adopt these changes even before you step into interview sessions. Meaning, before you start attending your interviews, if you are able to differentiate, if you are able to catch these changes, you will talk in a different way, you will think in a different way. When you explain certain things, you will show the impact, you will show the difference. Now, since you're talking about this, as a consultant, you're going to work in a project. Project means a client. Client means a specific company. In this example, Lenovo. For Lenovo, there will be a single chart of account. Meaning, in the client system, there is a single chart of account. When I say in the client system, there will be a single chart of account. Your document splitting configuration is maintained at Lenovo operating chart of account level in the real project. In your practice system, in the test server, you are going to create document splitting at multiple levels. Meaning, you are only creating a document splitting 3 times. Apple company code chart of account is different, Sony is different, ABC is different, because these are 3 different companies. Definitely you'll have to create 3 different chart of account. Even if you bring this into SAP consulting, you will be creating 3 chart of account, but you will be using 3 different servers. You'll be using 3 different SAP instances. If you are working in Lenovo, you cannot parallelly work in Apple. If you are working in Apple, you cannot parallelly work in ABC. You'll be working only in one client. Now here you're talking about implementations only, not support. Here specifically we are representing implementation projects, not support project, because in the implementation one time you will work in single project, whereas in support at a time you may be supporting 3-4 clients. Possible. In support project at a time you may be supporting multiple clients, which is possible, but in the implementation at a time you will be implementing for a single client. Okay, now when you're talking about this as a learner, as a consultant, these are the minor differences that you'll have to catch. Once these differences are caught, now you understood there is a single chart of account level document splitting will be used. Now here, do I have any space here? Okay, I'll put document splitting is a client level configuration. It is applicable for all company codes it is a one-time configuration. Okay, this statement you'll have to remember. Document splitting is a client level configuration. This is applicable for all company codes. It is a one-time configuration. Again, if you have 100 company codes, everybody knows that you will not be creating 100 company codes at a time. Initially, you may be creating one company code or 2, 3, 5 company codes. Later on, you are going to add additional company codes as part of rollout. Later on, you are going to add additional company codes as part of rollout. When you're talking about rollout project, you're not going to define document splitting again. Why you don't define document splitting when you create a new company code when you're working in the rollout? Because this is a client level configuration. It is applicable for all company codes. It's a one-time configuration. Certain points you'll have to understand with respect to document splitting. It is not only about the types of document splitting that you represent active, passive, zero. This is not the point that somebody is expecting to hear from you in the interview. This is not the point that somebody wants to hear from you. Before you talk about this, your explanation should be in a different way. Practically, why we use document splitting, what is the impact of it, that is something that you'll have to represent. Only then, whatever you talk, active, passive, zero, any definition, types, examples that you have will be valid, provided you add certain key points. These are the key points that you'll have to remember at the beginning, meaning your business transactions, accounting entries and all. Reason, when you're talking about a document splitting and all, these are coming from your accounting entries only. This is something that you're assigning at the debit credit accounting entry, meaning at the base level, the basic fundamental point in your accounting is journal entry. At the journal entry level, you're deciding document splitting setup. If your journal entry is not capturing a document splitting functionality, your reporting will go for a toss. If your reporting is gone for a toss, everything is gone for a toss, your implementation is gone for a toss. It is called as incorrect implementation, implementation failure. You see, some companies will do the implementation, in between the client will change the company. If ABC client is implementing SAP from XYZ consulting a company, in between if they see that no, they are not creating properly, we are not happy, then they will remove XYZ from their project. They'll give the project to somebody, some other company. There are so many projects like that. Many projects will fail because of different reasons. Client will appoint another consulting company to complete the project because some companies will fail to understand the business requirement. When we say some companies, we are not representing a company here. We are representing a consultant who is working in the project. If you are the FICO consultant, it is your responsibility to understand their business process. And there are certain configurations, as you know, there are configurations at client level, there are configurations at company code level, there are configurations at country level. Very, very important, very sensitive configurations are the ones that you are defining at the client level. Once it is given, or if once it is maintained incorrectly, everything will go for a toss because it is straight away affecting all the other company codes. When we say it is straight away affecting all the other company codes, everywhere data is gone for a toss. Your reports will not come properly. Now, when you're talking about report, you're not talking about executing a report, getting the output, getting a number. That is not the way you have to look at a report. When you're talking about a report, don't go to a transaction, don't put your company code, some XYZ parameter, click on execute, output is coming, numbers are coming, report is working. That is wrong way of testing. Even in the project, if you're testing like that as a consultant, you are not testing properly. You have to test accounting. Accounting means everybody is going to validate the number. When I say everybody is going to validate the number, if they are not getting the expected number, they will blame the system. When I say they will blame the system, they say that no, my reports are not coming correct, values are not correct. Now you have to step in as a FICO consultant, understand why values are not correct. Understand why values are not correct. Then you need to find out different points. You need to raise different questions into the picture, that why this entry is posted. First of all, I posted the entry. How come system accepted the entry? Why there is no control in the system? Different points will come into picture. That is why whenever you take any SAP project, any implementation project, it will go for months, it will go for years, because there are a lot of things to be performed, a lot of things to be tested, a lot of things to be understood, a lot of things to be configured. And to do all these activities in sequential order while integrating other modules, it will take more than what you imagine. It will take the time more than what you actually imagine. Again, when you're talking about this, you have to come out of this approach. Why we need to come out of this approach is, as a FICO learner, you are completing your training in 3 months also. Here you are completing your training in 3 months also, meaning within 3 months you are able to complete SAP FICO course, all the configurations, 1 hour a day, right? But as a FICO consultant, you are taking, let's say, 1 year here. Why 1 year here, 8 hours a day? Why 3 months here, 1 hour a day? You need to understand the differences, meaning it is not only doing the configuration, there is a lot beyond that. There is a lot that you are going to do beyond your configuration. That is the reason your projects are taking 1 year, 1.5 year, 2 year likewise. And what exactly you will do 8 hours a day? wherein 1 hour a day you are able to complete your FICO course within 3 months or within 4 months. Why 8 hours a day it is taking 1 year? We need to slowly start understanding, questioning ourselves. That is where you will start thinking, that is where you will start understanding what exactly is happening in the project and how you need to think, how you need to understand from the consulting point of view. Because tomorrow when you talk about any point, now in this situation we are only talking about a document splitting. It has to be document splitting. When you talk, the other person should realize that yes, what you're talking is actually document splitting, because you're not talking about document splitting is XYZ. There are three types of document splitting: active splitting, passive splitting, zero balance splitting. I'm done, sir. My question answer is over. You ask me next question. Nobody will ask you any question. Everybody will understand. Okay, I understood your background. I will be rejecting you because everybody is aware this is mandatory question in every interview. When we know that this is mandatory interview in a mandatory question in every interview, you need to make sure why everybody is asking this question in every interview. If it is only about active, passive, zero balance, three stages or three types, three definition, three example, why everybody is asking? Meaning there is something beyond that. That is the only reason somebody is asking. There are certain topics, there are certain questions which are tricky questions which will put you in trap. And if you remember the Google answers, if you talk the definition configuration, you will be under the trap. You are falling under the interviewer trap, because to understand your actual understanding, to understand your actual experience, knowledge, subject, concept, they are going to put certain standard questions, open questions for everybody. SAP FICO, open topics, open questions. How you talk, what you talk matters there. The simple point, it's not that it's not the very secret interview, nobody knows what they are going to ask. It is not like that. Openly known to everybody. You will get in the market everything. You will get interview question along with the answer. If you Google it, question with the answer, you will get it. But still we are not able to clear the interview, still people are not getting the job. Means if you read and explain, the other person can easily catch you. And if you do not have the conceptual understanding, you will not be able to convince the other person. Tomorrow you need to talk and explain, make the other person feel that you know the SAP FICO, or you know the concept, you know the understanding how this practically works in a project. For you to give that impact, for you to give that impression, you need to know different other points. Only then you can bring these points into your words while explaining to somebody in your interview or anywhere. These points are not only specifically to interview, these are related to everything. Now here when we are talking about the posting, when I'm talking about posting here, I have given two examples here. One is if debit and credit is not equal, you cannot post the accounting entry, and we've mentioned that this is applicable only at the company code level. Second point we have listed, if debit and credit are not equal, we cannot post entry, but we said at profit center level, even if debit and credit are not equal, still we can post the entry. This is possible. This is possible if document splitting configuration is not properly maintained. This is possible because you have not maintained a document splitting configuration properly. If you know what is the business requirement, if you know how document splitting actually works, then when you maintain the splitting configuration properly, this is not possible. This is possible though your debit credit is zero at company code level, profit center level debit credit is not zero, still I am able to post the entry because my splitting configuration is not correct. Meaning, according to me, I do not know how exactly it is to be configured, and we have mentioned that it's a one-time configuration. And we have mentioned it is a one-time configuration. One time only you need to set up. Later on, if you make any changes unknowingly also, it will be a big impact. Later on, if you make any changes to the document splitting unknowingly, it will be a very big impact. All the reports will go for a toss for all the company codes. For example, you have 100 company codes. One small mistake in the document splitting by a FICO consultant will affect all the 100 company codes of your client. All the 100 company codes of your client will get affected In this situation, even SAP will also not support. In this situation, even SAP will also not support. SAP will also tell this is configuration change. Please check with your SAP consultant. You know that the consultant is the person who made this problem. And when you make certain changes in the document splitting, you have to understand it will straight away affect all your company codes, because you are going to generate reports at the profit center level. In short, based on the document splitting, you are going to generate financial statements. At this level, unknowingly, if you make any changes without knowing the impact, everything will get affected. Unknowingly, if you make any changes, everything will get affected. These changes, these problems, you have to understand. When I say these changes, these problems, you need to understand. When you have a clarity on this, you will be able to talk in a confident way. You'll be able to quote different examples. You'll be able to tell different points in your interview. That time you are no longer talking about the definition of document splitting. You're no longer talking about active passive zero. Apart from this, you are going to talk different other points with which any other person who is listening to you will be impressed. They say that yes, he is the guy who has actually known, or he is aware of the practical points or practical functionality of document splitting. They will take you, they'll shortlist you. Chances are very, very high. If you know the points properly, if you know what exactly you need to talk. Else, you will be talking the regular content, what everybody is talking, what your Google is explaining. Same thing you are going to talk, you are going to get a feedback called you are a SAP FICO learner, you are not a consultant. Right? You should get a feedback, you should talk like you are a consultant, not like you are a learner. The way your learning is different, the way your consulting is different. Learning is only to some extent. To make you feel comfortable, confident, you are using the learning as a platform. Once you gain that confidence, once you are familiar with the system, you should switch to consultant, meaning the way you think, the way you configure, the way you look at the configuration, the way you talk should be representing as a consultant. For that, you'll have to put a little effort. From now onwards, if you put a little more effort, this is very easy. There's no complications. It's very easy. Now what I'll do, I'll stop this here. I'll stop this here for today. In the next session, I'll continue from here. In the next session, I'll continue from here. Then I'll write different examples. I'll show the configurations, what we do for document splitting, why we are doing this document splitting, at what level you're going to generate the report, how reports are coming, what settings are maintained in the document splitting for what purpose. Tomorrow in the interview, when somebody is asking you to talk about a document splitting, when somebody is asking you whether you really paid the documents, whether you really worked on document splitting, what you are going to talk, how you are going to talk in a minute or 2 minutes, which will create a positive opinion, which will create a positive impact in the interview. I'll practically explain, I'll practically show certain things in the system in the next session. Okay, so once I complete the tomorrow's session, wherein we are going to complete the document splitting, or we are going to understand complete or maximum points that are relevant for you to create the positive impact in any interview, will be completed tomorrow. After that, any doubts, any confusions that you have at this moment will be automatically clarified when I talk practical points in the next session. Okay, so we'll continue with the remaining portion of document splitting in the tomorrow's session. Good night.
Ajay,